The Big 12 is in trouble, and they only have one hero they can rely on. But will he be healthy? Who knows? It was a great week of college football. We had Tennessee, Oklahoma, and of course, is Michigan back? We'll talk about all that and more. It's football, bro. You can find this in its video form Monday and Tuesday on the YouTube at Broshmo, or you can check out it on its audio form on any podcasting platform. Let's go ahead, get into a few of the top games this week in college football. Starting with Tennessee, Oklahoma. This was a watch-along game that we did. And, man, I've been saying it for the last few weeks. Well, ever since the NC State game. This Tennessee defense is elite. It is legit. And it came to play. Fun fact, the Oklahoma defense is really good as well. But Tennessee didn't need Nico to be nuts. He had a couple of big plays here and maybe there. But this was a defensive game. This was, man. That defensive line for Tennessee just were absolute monsters. They were monsters. They totally bullied that Oklahoma offensive line. That Oklahoma offensive line, man, they feel just unfortunately manhandled. They really do. And I feel bad for Jackson Arnold because I don't think it was all his fault. But you had Hawkins come in and look relatively good. I mean, yeah, he looked like a freshman quarterback at points, but with his ability to create with his legs, that was kind of huge. It kind of got Oklahoma back into the game. Not enough to cover that 6.5. Won me my parlay, so I'm very happy about that. But Tennessee is a championship caliber team. They are. They could win it on the ground, whether that's with Samson, whether that's with Nico. They can win it through the air, through Nico's arm. Am I saying he's perfect through the air? No. This is his first year as a full-time starter, but he has looked relatively good. But this team has shown that they don't need the offense to be super powered. They don't need the offense to be spectacular every game. That the defense could buy time for that offense to get going if they need to. That this defense could grind the game out. Like, they are that good. They are truly that good. And the question might be, well, is Oklahoma good? And I think Oklahoma is good. Honestly, a 10-point loss to Tennessee isn't bad. We saw what Tennessee did to NC State. I know that they're not good. We saw what they did to Kent State. We know they're not good. But still, I mean, this was a team, Tennessee, that was blowing out bad teams. They didn't blow out Oklahoma. Oklahoma's got a really good defense. Am I saying that they're a championship or even a playoff caliber team? Absolutely not. But they're a good team. I think they're going to have a relatively fine year in the SEC. Maybe end up being an 8-win team. I think if things really go off the rails at offense or on offense. Because keep in mind, they had a lot of injuries at the wide receiver position. You had Nick Anderson go down in this game, along with, was it Thompson that went down? I can't recall, but they had some injuries. But even if the offense goes off the rails, I think this is probably still a 7-win team for the Sooners in their first year in the SEC, which, hey, that's still, I think, hella good. But that Tennessee defensive line, I mean, we could pull it up right now. Just looking at the pass rush win rate of some of these guys. You had Elijah Simmons, who 25% pass rush win rate. Freaking insane. Omari Thomas, who, hey, that's a favorite of mine right there. 15.4% pass rush win rate. James Pierce, I mean, he had 6 pressures, but it was still only a 13% win rate, so he didn't need to be spectacular because, well, fun fact, the rest of the defensive line was spectacular. This is a team that constantly got pressure. They had 33 pressures for the game. Just, again, absolutely obliterated that offensive line for Oklahoma. So maybe better days lay ahead for the Sooners. Tennessee, they're legit. Let's roll to this next game, being USC Michigan. I caught the fourth quarter of this game, went back, watched the first half, and whoo, man, don't sleep on Michigan. If they end up beating one of either Oregon or Ohio State, they're probably in the college football playoff. Like, how can a team that only passed for 32 yards be a playoff caliber team? Well, when their defense is freaking disgusting. I'm going to talk about the pass rushers for Michigan a little bit later, but the pass rush was insane. Like USC, their offensive line was outmanned, outgunned, and that was one of the things coming into this game. Can the offensive line deal with the trench warfare of the Big Ten? Can the defense deal with the physicality of Big Ten offenses? And I think the defense for USC played really well in the second half. Apart from the final drive where, dude, Mullins, he is your hero. He is your saint. He is your savior. All hail Khalil Mullins. The dude's a dog. Had a big day. I'll be talking about him later in the video when we talk about stock up, stock down. But I thought the USC defense actually played relatively well. They had a few injuries here and there. But the offensive line never got better. They were absolutely terrible. Michigan wins the game 27-24. And they end up being able to drive late, get the game-winning touchdown. USC, unfortunately, could not respond. Poor Miller Moss, man. This was actually a good game for Miller Moss. Some people might be like, what? What? The dude was pressured 27 times. You had guys like, well, first off, you had like Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant finally deciding to come to work. Josiah Stewart continues to have a huge year. He had an insane pass rush win rate alongside Derek Moore. So, like, this is a dude you need to put on your draft radar. I'm going to go back and I'm going to do a full eval on Derek Moore this week. But, like, he was impressive in this game. He's been impressive this year. Like, the pass rush is utterly insane from Michigan. It is. The defense is insane. You had Will Johnson. I don't know more about the injury. Unfortunately, when it comes to that, he ends up walking to the locker room in the second half. But he had the pick six, his second pick six of the year. On just, I get it, man. Miller Moss, you're under pressure. Like, Miller Moss very much had a up-down game, right? Let's just call it what it is. It was very much a up-down game. But I thought he played relatively well, man. He gave this team chances. Like, you saw the whole shot on the touchdown pass to take the lead. Like, Miller Moss is kind of legit. He's an NFL quarterback. He's an NFL quarterback. He's playing good football, especially given like just how the dire situation. And I mean, let's talk about the game flow, because Michigan utterly owned the first half. They go in halftime up 14-3, and this was all about USC trying to fight its way back. Let's give props to the man, the myth, the legend, freaking Woody Marks, having a good game here. He ends up going for 100 yards on 13 carries. He had 40 yards receiving, but probably the play of the game. Well, he had multiple. So on the, I think this was the drive to I don't think it was to take the lead. I think it was to bring it within 3. But he had the big run. He ends up going for like a 65-yarder. He comes off the field. I think there was like a false start or a lineman penalty, forces him back 5 yards. And he comes back in because he was a little banged up. He was working through something. I don't know what the injury was, but he was banged up. He comes back in, and Miller Moss gets strip sacked, essentially. Kenneth Grant picks it up, and he's scrambling down the field. The big boy's rolling. We know Kenneth Grant got that straight line speed. And Woody Marks was like, not today. not just ran him down, which, okay, that's not that unbelievable. Freaking Kenneth Grant, all of like 330, but stripped the ball away, forced the turnover, and gave USC another shot to get back in this game, which they did take advantage of. Woody Marks, you hero, you legend. He is him. I've been waiting for a big Woody Marks game. I really liked him at Mississippi State, and he's been relatively solid at USC thus far this season. But USC, I think better days lay ahead. I don't know about the offensive line though. Like, again, I mean, we could go look at it, and this offensive line was really working through it. You had Mason Murphy, who was playing both left tackle and right tackle. He ended up allowing 6 pressures. You had honestly a decent game from Pregnon, the left guard. My boy Jonah Monheim, he got his first taste of that Big 12 or Big 10 defensive front, and it was a rough go. Keep in mind, this is his first year playing center too. So, and he's 3 games into playing center for the first time. Ended up allowing 4 pressures here. But, I mean, you had a mixture of Raymond and Page at both left and right tackle. They allowed 7 pressures combined. Like, this was a bad showing for the offensive line of USC. They were able to get something going late, but like Michigan, they end up passing for 32 yards. You kind of knew the game plan when it was Alex Orji. You knew the game plan. We are going to just embrace, hey, we are a run the ball team. We're going to have to run for like 250, 300 yards to win games. We're going to grind out games. We're going to let our defense just take over, and we're going to try to control possession, allow our defense to put us in opportunistic positions, field positions, so that we can drive and put points on the board. So it's not going to be pretty week in, week out, unfortunately for Michigan. But I think it is a formula that can work. I think it is. Because they got the horses. The offensive line played a really good game. Keep in mind, Michigan's a team that replaced essentially 6 starters on the offensive line because they all went to the draft. And it's not to say that the guys on the offensive line for Michigan now are raw, because they're not. A lot of them are very veteran. It's just they're not experienced. So now they've gotten the taste of kind of these big games with Texas, with USC, and that's just going to keep rolling. So I think we're going to definitely see this Michigan offensive line grow before our eyes. Truly do. All right, let's talk about this Big 12 conundrum. We might as well talk about both these games at once. So Utah ends up beating Oklahoma State 22-19. And then BYU after dark. It's a dangerous place. This is why I never bet BYU. I have lost many bets, either betting for or betting against BYU. And I've learned not to bet BYU. And I looked at this game and I was like, I like Kansas State +6 or -6.5, but I know don't bet BYU games. It's a fun fact. They have never covered for me, whether it was a over and under, whether it was taking the points, taking the money line, for them, against them. BYU just loses me money. Maybe it's because I'm not Mormon. I don't know. But I know not to bet BYU games, and I was right. I liked Kansas State -6.5, but I was like, something's funky. I'm not doing it. It's BYU. I know. They're funky. Forget this. They smack Avery Johnson and Kansas State 38-9. Golly. But let's talk about the first part here. No Cam Rising just yet. Freaking no Cam Rising. He is the only one that could save the Big 12. Because the Big 12, they are not going to get more than one team into the college football playoff. Like, the Big 12 is, at this point, it doesn't feel like it's going to be Kansas. Kansas, they're 0-1 in the Big 12 right now. Or Kansas State, I should say. Kansas are on their own little struggle bus. They're 1-3. But Kansas State, that Arizona game, that didn't count. That was a game scheduled before Arizona became a part of the Big 12, so it doesn't count as a conference game when it comes to the schedule. So Kansas State, starting the year out, 0-1 in conference play. That sucks. So does Oklahoma State. I mean, Oklahoma State has looked terrible. I'm jumping around here, but it's like outside of whoever the hell wins the Big 12, what other team are they going to get into the playoff? Oklahoma State hasn't looked impressive. Kansas State, now coming off a really bad week, hasn't looked impressive. Arizona has not looked impressive. Am I going to buy into BYU or Central Florida as contenders? Utah, are we ever going to get Cam Rising? Even if this team wins the Big 12, is Cam Rising going to come back? How bad's the hand injury? Because I don't believe in Utah going to the college football playoff without Cam Rising. Like, Isaac Wilson's okay. I mean, really, this whole thing, like this Utah-Oklahoma State game, was just a battle between two offenses that have lost their way. Isaac Wilson, man, it's just like you're trying to mitigate what disaster with him, because like this Oklahoma State defense was really good. They were all over the place. Forced, you had 2 interceptions there by Trey Rucker. Spoiler alert, another guy I'm going to talk about in that stock up, stock down portion of the stream. But like, honestly, like this, like Wilson made a couple of big throws here and there, but for the most part, this offense wasn't doing anything. Like Micah Bernard came through in a big way, but like Utah was really kind of just bailed out by the defense, putting them in very good positions and occasionally hitting the big play here and there. They almost let Oklahoma State back in this game because the offense is so inept at scoring that they couldn't really pull away. I mean, we saw Alan Bowman get benched after halftime just to reemerge, come back into the game, and almost lead the comeback, so to speak. Ollie Gordon's not running this. This is one of the worst run blocking offensive lines in football. And some people will be like, they were so good last year. They returned quite a few starters. They weren't good at the end of the year in 2023. They weren't. And that's kind of rubbed off into this season. So I don't really trust either of those teams here. You got Kansas State, BYU, Avery Johnson basically got forced into, hey, you're not going to kill us on the ground. BYU came in, we're going to shut down the run. And they did. They were like, all right, Avery Johnson, beat us with your arm. Don't worry, we'll wait. And it never came. They had just had and I mean, dude, Avery Johnson's a young quarterback. I think he's a true sophomore. He's got time. But right now, that time is not now. It's not now. It was a great game plan for BYU. You had the magical punt return that you almost had Kingston pull a Deshaun Jackson and just drop the ball behind him after just a nutty, because initially it was muffed. He picks it up, goes one way, flips field, and then just takes it to the house. It was truly, truly magical. But yeah, you had the BYU defense come up huge. Even when Avery Johnson tried to go through the air, I think he threw a pick here or two. But is BYU legit? I don't know, because that SMU game, because I thought SMU was a bad team. Now I'm having to rethink that. Maybe TCU's just a bad team. I don't know, man. I'm just out here trying to figure it out. Sometimes college football, sometimes causation isn't correlation, or however the hell that saying goes. Sometimes you just can't take it. Take a team for what they were the previous week. Sometimes they just come back and play different. Question is anyone in the Big 12 good? Are they playoff good? And I don't currently have the answer to that. I don't. And that's going to be reflected in my college football top 25, which we'll get to in a second. But first, I gotta give. What am I doing? I always wanted to do Broadway, but I don't got the voice for it. What can I say? But we got to give a shout out to the sponsor of today's stream, today's video. And that sponsor is going to be Underdog Fantasy. When you use promo code Broshmo to sign up at Underdog Fantasy, they will match your first deposit up to $250. And you could get in on the action, especially today, because we don't just got one, but we got two Monday night football games. They have a couple of promos for you to take advantage of tonight. For instance, you get a free gimme prop pick. Burrow, is he going to go over or under 1 yard? Like I said, it's a gimme pick for your player props. They also got quite a few here. I mean, of course, you got like Josh Allen, James Cook. You got Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, Jaden Daniels. He's almost guaranteed to score on the ground. I don't know. We'll see. But if you want to get in on the action at Underdog Fantasy, because it is the best place to play weekly best ball. I have a great time doing that. Or higher or lower on player props, then shoot, go to Underdog, sign up, use promo code Broshmo, and they will match that first deposit up to $250. Let's go ahead. Let's talk about the college football top 25. That's right, because we had some movers this week. We had some movers because we had some winners, and we had some losers in some of these big games. So let's go ahead, start this sucker right off the bat with my fallers, as you had Oklahoma going down to Tennessee. I didn't have Oklahoma very high in my rankings. I think the AP had them at 15. I think they were around like 22 for me. So, of course, this loss, now possibly changing quarterbacks, it causes me to have to drop them a bit more. So, they're a faller. Toledo, rough loss, man. They had a delay in that game as well, but they end up go down to Western Kentucky 26-21 after the big win against a Power 4 team. Granted, that Power 4 team was Mississippi State, but still, it's a big win for a MAC team, and then you lose to Western Kentucky. That sucks. I still think that Toledo is the favorite to win the MAC, but having that one loss kind of takes them out of probably the run-in to be that group of 5 team that makes the college football playoff. And we'll talk about maybe a couple of the other options who can be that team. But those were my 2 fallers. Let's talk about teams that just missed it. As, man, I want to get UNLV in this top 25 so badly. They are currently undefeated. They're coming off a bye. They get a big game this week, a big Mountain West game this week against Fresno State. So be on the look for that sucker. Illinois, they had a big win. I didn't have them ranked last week. They're on the outside looking in this week. They beat Nebraska in overtime 31-24. Basically, they were just a more physical team than Nebraska. It was a good win, but a big reason I didn't put them in my top 25 just yet is because this upcoming week they have Penn State. So I feel like if I just put them in my top 25 here and now, they end up losing to Penn State, they're going to end up falling right out. So I got them on the, okay, let's wait, and then let's see. Let's talk about the undefeated Indiana Hoosiers. Golly, they first of all, they covered the spread. They beat Charlotte 52-14. I had no doubt. I had them minus 20.5. They covered that. Felt great. But golly, Rourke is a monster. This offense feels good. And you still have the head coach there, former JMU head coach, saying, yeah, we didn't do things perfectly. We could be better here and there. But ultimately, I'm content with the victory. You just beat the pants off of this poor Charlotte team. You're just content? They do got a big matchup next week against Maryland. So we'll see. That's also a Maryland team not to sleep on. They've really only had one stumble this year, and that happened to be against Michigan State. I do think it's a very good Maryland team that's going to be finding their groove. So let's see how Indiana pans out there, and we'll see if they end up sneaking in to the top 25. Pittsburgh, watch out, the ACC. They got some players here. They got some players. Pittsburgh coming off the big win last second against West Virginia. There we go. And then they come in and they just pound Youngstown State. Kind of is what it is. It's to be expected. For Youngstown State, didn't have a chance. They win 73-17. They will have a bye before they kick off ACC play. And then Iowa State, they smashed Arkansas State 52-7. Their biggest win thus far coming this year was against Iowa. I wasn't too high on Iowa, so that meant less to me than what it did to people making the top 25, the AP and all that. So that win didn't mean as much as it probably did to them. But they'll get Houston, who's just not a good football team right now, coming up. They should be 4-0 going into conference play. This is another team where it's like, hey, Big 12, do we have any legit contenders? If you're a legit contender, please stand up. Please stand up. And that's going to be reflected in my top 25. So let's just go ahead, get into it. As at 25, I still have SMU. I don't know what team SMU is. I just don't. Like, who is this team? Who the hell is this SMU team? Because they blow out TCU 68-42, and they do it on all three phases. They had a punt return for a touchdown. They had a pick six and a fumble six. And then offensively, they were just able to move the ball hella well. I'm just going to jump into the box score real quick as it looks like Kevin Jennings is now the guy as he went 14-19 for only 137 yards, but 2 tutties. The offense didn't really need to do that much. But boy, Rashard Smith. Yo, watch out for this cat. He's another guy that I'm going to see if I can watch this week. I don't know his eligibility, so that might decide if I watch him or not. So we're going to have to wait and see. But he had 3 touchdowns in this game. On the ground, he had another touchdown in the passing game. So 4 total tutties. Love to see it. But, like, man, dude, just a dominant performance. And I'm like, okay. Like, this is where SMU is at. You start the year with a very underwhelming performance against Nevada. You try to get you get your win back by just crushing Houston. Was it Houston Christian? Then you have a ugly, tough, close loss against BYU, where it was very much a defensive game, and then you just pound TCU and ruin my big leg parlay. Okay. I see you, SMU. I just don't trust you. Rutgers, they go in. They beat Virginia Tech in Blacksburg. Mind you, the Metallica did play, I think, the previous night there at the stadium. So that's kind of nuts. But not enough for Virginia Tech to get the win here. Though they did fight back. Listen, that's a good Virginia Tech team. They've taken, like, the opening week loss. Yeah, that kind of sucked, but I think that team's better than that loss. And honestly, Vandy's not that bad of a team this year. I mean, shoot, Vandy almost beat Missouri this weekend, and we'll talk a little bit about that when we get to Missouri. But yeah, Rutgers, this is a really good win. They're going to be taking on Washington next week, and I think that's very winnable. Washington's coming off a nice win there against Northwestern, but we'll see, man. I think Rutgers might be legit. Central Florida, they had the week off, but they get Colorado next week. Colorado fresh off winning a crazy game against Baylor where you had a Hail Mary and just all kinds of shenanigans. It was nuts. But as you can see, this is where you're going to start to see these Big 12 teams trickle in, because I have no idea really who is the front runner for the Big 12. I got an idea, with it just depends on their quarterback situation. But then who's that other team that can challenge here? As I got Oklahoma State here. I still think they're a good squad that just hasn't found their groove. And defensively, they're very good with guys like you got Colin Oliver. You have Nick Martin. You got Trey Rucker there in the secondary. You got good players on that defense, and that defense is able to keep them in games. But offensively, it's just got to freaking click one day. They will get a big game this weekend coming up against Kansas State. Both teams looking to rebound, and honestly, that game probably will eliminate the loser from participating in the Big 12 championship game. Arizona, they're coming off a bye. Think about what you did or what you didn't do the previous week against Kansas State. Got blown out. Now you get a chance to really cause some chaos in the Big 12 as they take on Utah this week. Where is Cam Rising? Can I be your hero, baby? I don't know. How's the hand, Cam? How's the hand? So it's going to be fascinating. If there's no Cam Rising, if it is Isaac Wilson, then Arizona got a shot. Arizona's got a shot. They just got to learn to play defense and figure out they got to figure out their offense to be less T-Mac reliant. And I'm not saying, okay, don't throw to T-Mac. I'm just saying you got to be more than just T-Mac save us. So I got them here at 21. Let's go to team 20 here as it's USC after the loss. Listen, that's not a bad loss for USC. You travel to Ann Arbor. You get beat up physically, but your team looks really good in the second half. Miller Moss looks legit. Better days lay ahead for this USC team. They might not be competitors for the Big Ten championship this year, which they're probably not. But I still think they're a hell of a good team. I really do. I think they're ready for the task. You're just kind of hoping the offensive line could look a little bit better. Kansas State, again, they lost to BYU. BYU's one spot. Listen, I had BYU outside of the top 25. I can only bump them up so much. And I feel like Kansas State will get that swag back against Oklahoma State. I don't know. We'll see. Again, next week's kind of a big week for the Big 12. I think we're going to at least decide possibly who could be one of those teams in the Big 12 championship discussion. And then, of course, you got Baylor coming off, or not Baylor, BYU coming off of the big win. Now they're 4-0. And they take on Baylor, who's coming off a disappointing loss. You lost on the Hail Mary, then you lose in OT. It just sucks. It sucks if you're a Baylor fan. So BYU Baylor is going to be a very fascinating game right there. So be on the look. Again, someone's got to emerge from this Big 12 to challenge, which, okay, spoiler alert, Utah's the highest Big 12 team I have. But again, Cam, where are you? All right. I got LSU here at 17. They just don't feel that good. They lost also Harold Perkins for the rest of the year to, I think it was a knee injury. That's a big hit for a defense that was already kind of sucky. And that's just the case. I mean, I don't know, man. LSU just, they feel so lost. So lost. They feel mid. They feel like a very mediocre team. They end up being UCLA. UCLA came out, played a good game after getting pounded by the Hoosiers the previous week. But LSU, they get it done 34-17, I believe. Do they got a bye or are they taking on? No, they take on South Alabama next week. And then I think they get a bye before having to take on Ole Miss. So LSU, you got one more, seemingly a gimme game, but don't sleep on South Alabama. I mean, they're coming off a big Appalachian State win, so maybe don't sleep on them. Notre Dame, they're here at 16. They got the job done against Miami, Ohio, 28-3. They take on Louisville. I don't think this team's ready for Louisville. the passing game right now for Notre Dame is just it kind of is what it is. This is a team that just struggles to push the ball downfield, and they kind of they kind of feel like Michigan, but you feel a little bit better about what's going on at quarterback. I feel like Notre Dame is just Michigan, but with a better quarterback, maybe. That's kind of where Notre Dame is, but they're going to be taking on a very good, very, very good Louisville team. All right, at 15, I got Clemson. Welcome back. Fresh off smacking NC State, which, hey, NC State, they're not that good of a team. It kind of is what it is. But they win 59-35. They covered the 18.5-point spread with ease. I had no doubts, especially after, the first quarter, or I think the first quarter, at least early into the second quarter, it was 35-0. But this Clemson team's better than what we saw against Georgia. They opened the year against Georgia. Georgia's a very good team. That was a very defensive ball game in the first half. And then in the second half, Clemson offense couldn't do anything. The defense got gassed. It kind of is what it is. But I thought that Georgia game at least told me, okay, Clemson, tough matchup. I'm not out completely on them. Let's see how they do in their cupcake portion of their schedule, which NC State wasn't supposed to be a cupcake game. Appalachian State, yeah, that was going to be a confidence builder, and it was. NC State ends up being worse than people anticipated, myself included, and suddenly that becomes this is kind of the get right portion of our schedule. They get Stanford next week. Don't sleep on Stanford coming off a big win against Syracuse. And then here I have Louisville at 14. A very, very impressive game against Georgia Tech. One where I thought Louisville did a wonderful job against a very good Georgia Tech offensive line. They were able to get the win 31-19. They do take on Notre Dame next week, and I believe that is in South Bend. So that's probably going to be our watch-along. One of our watch-along games, along with Bama and Georgia, of course. Michigan, they're back here at 13. Listen, I think they could be a college football playoff team. Oh, if they're only going to pass for 32 yards, then I don't see how that can happen. I do. That defense is really good. If that defense could create points, which, fun fact, it has already done this year multiple times, then, I mean, you just control the game, control the time of possession, control the line of scrimmage, run the ball. Like, dude, everybody got going. You had, I think, 3 players had 13 or more carries in this game. Granted, one of them was Alex Orji. But, Donovan Edwards got going. Mullins has been, I think, their best back this year. Don't sleep on Michigan just yet. Am I saying they beat Ohio State? Am I saying they beat Oregon? No. But if they win one of those games, I wouldn't be surprised. Liberty's here at 12. They end up being East Carolina in a game that was delayed for many hours. Many hours. I ended up being able to watch the end of this game while sitting in bed. And it was pretty close. And keep in mind, ECU, they just lost Siobhan Revel, who was a legit first-round prospect at corner for the Pirates. They end up losing him for the remainder of the year, unfortunately. So that's a big hit. They came in and they played competitive against Liberty. I did think Liberty's I do think this week and then next week was probably going to be Liberty's toughest tests. They were able to get by ECU 35-24. Now they take on an Appalachian State team that's coming off a bad loss against South Alabama. So I still believe Liberty has the easiest schedule of any college football team in America. I think they probably go undefeated. They win Conference USA, and that gets them the Group of 5 bid. That's what I banked on prior to the season coming into the year, and I'm just going to ride with it until they take that L. Missouri's here at 11. They drop a few spots. Listen, I'm not saying Mizzou's not a good football team. They are certainly a really good football team. You're going to have some of these close wins against less than desirable opponents. I mean, Georgia just had it the previous week with Kentucky, but Missouri able to pull away. And fortunately, what was it? Overtime. They win 30-27. They get a bye next week. I still believe they have a relatively easy schedule compared to most SEC teams. They still have Bama on the schedule, but I do think they probably end up, worst case scenario, a 10-2 team, which should put them in contention for the college football playoff. All right, next, 10. I got the Hurricanes, baby. The Hurricanes. They covered the 16.5 against South Florida. I had no doubts. Took a big second half, but they did it. I'm happy they beat South Florida, 50-45. Cam Ward looked great in the game. He had an interception. I don't think it was entirely his fault, but he looked great. He's honestly, he looks like he could be quarterback 1 in this class. Like, quite legitimately. We'll see how that goes with ACC play kicking off. They will play on Friday night against Virginia Tech. I believe that game will be at Miami. Yeah, it'll be at Miami. It'll be at Hard Rock, so that's great. Cam Ward, he's on right now. He is pushing through he's making a case for the Heisman, which, hey, next week on the stream, we're gonna be talking about Heisman contenders. I'm gonna list my top 5. So I'm excited for that sucker. But yeah, now Miami will kick off ACC play with honestly a solid a good Virginia Tech team. Like, they're 2-2, but that's a good Virginia Tech team with a lot of talent. Don't sleep on them. Oregon, they had the bye this week. They get UCLA next week, which honestly might end up being another bye. So yeah, basically it's just like, hey, let's try to fine tune this thing before Ohio State comes to town. That's where Oregon's at. Penn State, they kicked the crap out of Kent State like every other team has this year. 56-0. They covered, I think they like the final number for the spread going into the game was -50.5. I was a coward. I think I bet that when it was 42.5, and I still bet it down to like 33.5. Because again, I'm a coward. It is what it is. But hey, that's why I hit some of my bets. That's why I make money most weeks rather than losing money. I'm not saying I hit the big ones, but I take my $25 and I at least turn it into 100. And then I'm happy. All right, but Penn State will get Illinois. That honestly should be a fun matchup. We'll see, because like Illinois plays a physical brand of football along the offensive line, and Penn State, their edge rushers haven't really been, well, particularly Carter, haven't really been able to get into it, and I don't know if I have faith in their ability to consistently stop the run. So we'll see. Tennessee, they're here at 7. I want to move this team up further, but like everyone's undefeated here. Like I could have made a great case to drop Utah, but I truly believe Utah's so, like, they're such a different team with Cam Rising at quarterback that, like, when he comes back, it's going to make a big difference. I think they run away with the Big 12 with ease, and they end up being the only Big 12 team to make the college football playoff. And I think Utah could even make a little bit of a run, like with Cam Rising. When they get that stability at quarterback, like, people don't realize how talented that team is, both offensively and defensively. It's a really good team. It's just right now their weakest spot is quarterback. But you have a really good quarterback. It's just like, okay, get healthy. Come on. Utah does take on Arizona, so hopefully the man, the myth, the legend will be back for that game. But Tennessee, man, they're looking great. I believe they get a bye next week, which is awesome. But the schedule does get significantly harder in the SEC. I mean, it's going to start this week with I mean, when I say the schedule gets harder in the SEC, I mean for a lot of these good teams. We're going to start off with like Bama and Georgia next weekend. Then you go to, let's take a look at week 6. And that's going to be, just show me SEC teams, please. There we go. Week 6. Oh, week 6, honestly, not that crazy. But, I mean, Mizzou does take on A&M. But, yeah. All right, let's take a look at week 7 then. As there's going to be LSU, Ole Miss, Texas, Oklahoma, Red River rivalry going on. Gotta love the alliteration there. And then week 8. When does this Texas Georgia game happen? Oh, it happens in week 8. Texas, Georgia. And you get Alabama, Tennessee that week. Golly. Hoo-wee. So yeah, the next month is gonna be, could be an utter bloodbath in the SEC, but I think I honestly, in reflection, I feel like I should have had Tennessee at 6. There, I said it. I should have moved the Utes down because I don't know if Cam Rising is ever going to be healthy. Top 5, Ole Miss. They pounded Georgia Southern, covered 35.5 because that's what they do. They covered. They get a Kentucky team, which we'll see. They should blow that Kentucky team out. What's the early spread on that game? If you don't mind me asking, what's the early spread on their college football game? As Ole Miss is 17.5. Of course, you would bet that down to 16.5, but yeah, that should be fine. Ole Miss's schedule doesn't really ramp up until I think that LSU game. I mean, okay, don't sleep on South Carolina. That's fair. They're at South Carolina. Don't sleep on South Carolina. Okay, so yeah, it'll ramp up from here, but I think they get past Kentucky. Alabama had the bye. Georgia had the bye. We could talk about them all at once here. The big matchup is this week. Bama versus Georgia. It's going to be at... where's it at? It's going to be at Alabama. It's going to be at Tuscaloosa. I think Alabama, this is the first time they've been underdogs at home since 2007. And currently, Georgia 1.5 point favorite. I don't know where I lean in that game just yet. Texas, Archie got things done. Was it perfect? No, but he still looked relatively good. Taking on the Warhawks, they beat them 51-3. Honestly, they could start Archie next week against Mississippi State. Just give Quinn Ewers the time he needs to get healthy. I know it's not a serious injury. Maybe Quinn Ewers plays part of that game just to kind of give him a few series just to kind of get back into the swing of things. I don't know. We'll see. Ohio State, they start conference play next week against Michigan State. They beat Marshall 49-14. Listen, I know this team is a talented team, but something just feels off. Their blowouts haven't really been blowouts, at least early on. Like Akron and Marshall gave them problems in the first half. I mean, yes, they were able to pull away and blow out those teams, but it just hasn't been as clean as you'd like. But this team has so much talent, it's really hard to bet against them. But go ahead, let me know what you think. Who would you have ranked where? Why am I too low on this team? Everyone's got your opinions. State them in the comment section below. If you want more draft content, more NFL content, I got it on the channel. Maybe check out this video here. But as always, until next time, you be easy, my friends. Later. But we're not going anywhere. I said later. I didn't mean it. Haha, I had you tricked. I had you fooled. We still got to do the stock report. But before we do the stock report, I got to give a shout out to my draft guide. Hey, if you like the NFL draft, well, I like the NFL draft. Let's go ahead How about you go ahead and take a look at my draft guide? I got already over 300 prospects on that sucker. I update it weekly. It's a Google spreadsheet, and it's the one that I use to keep track of all this craziness. So when I update it, you will see that in real time. You will get my rankings, my current big board in real time. It'll have pro day combine numbers. It has last year's analytics, this year's analytics. It has backgrounds on players, whether they got red flags, interest in sports, or interest in like sporting backgrounds, or maybe their pedigree, maybe their daddy played in the NFL, maybe they were a Hall of Famer like Mason Taylor. It's got all that cool stuff. So it's a great purchase if you want to know every player that your team is going to draft. Again, it is something that updates not just through the season, but also through the draft cycle. I'll have notes on the like Senior Bowl, Shrine Bowl, Hula Bowl participants. So if you really want to deep dive into the nitty gritty of this NFL draft, I got you covered. It's a $30 purchase, one $30 purchase, and that's it. It's yours here, now, and forever. You could either go to PayPal at Broshmo, Venmo at Broshmo, or of course the Cash App $realbroshmo. It's a great way to support the channel, and it's a great way to, well, know your stuff. But let's go ahead, get into the stock report, boys and girls. Hey, this past week in college football, it was nuts. It was crazy, and certainly you had some prospects that helped their stock and some that hurt their stock. Welcome to the stock report, and what's crack-a-lackin'? It's your boy Broshmo, just in case you did not know. So let's go ahead, get into this sucker with Ole Mullins, running back out of Michigan. I mean, of course, this guy popped off against the Trojans. He had a big game. He goes for 159 yards. I believe he had over 100 yards after contact. Had 2 tutties. He was absolutely unstoppable. Well, even Donovan Edwards had a big game. But like Donovan Edwards was someone I watched prior. Mullins was not. He's a guy with a small sample size, and he's actually got a pretty interesting background. Let's actually go ahead and get into that sucker. As when it comes to Mullins, he was a 3-star recruit out of the 2020 recruiting class, where he played both running back and linebacker, but he was actually recruited as a linebacker. So he ends up arriving to Michigan as a linebacker in 2020, played a lot of special teams, didn't really make the transition to running back until 2022, where he started playing running back at the end of the year for the Wolverines. So a guy that doesn't have a lot of tread, or has a ton of tread on the tires, doesn't have a lot of mileage, and he's been playing really, really well for the Wolverines. Like he's got a big build at 6'2", 233. He's a very, very tough runner. He plays strong, plays hard through contact. He's got a little bit of burst to him. He's a little shiftier behind the line of scrimmage than you'd expect for someone at 233. Just honestly, kind of the biggest knocks on him is like, okay, not really a high-end athlete laterally, not going to have like crazy change of direction or crazy stop-start ability. That's just not his game. But honestly, he does a relatively good job of giving defenders not the best angles to take on him, like not the best tackling angles. So like he doesn't really get hit like cleanly a lot. So you do like that. The long speed, it kind of is what it is. He's going to be a guy that gets caught from behind, but he's more than fine enough to be able to reel off chunk plays. And just his passing game usage it's nothing. He's not used as a pass protector a lot. He has 3 career receptions to his name. So like he is straight up like kind of basically this north-south one cut runner, power back, maybe an early down back with really nothing in the passing game. But because of his wealth of special teams experience, I think that makes him draftable. I think his ability, maybe even to come in as a linebacker on run-specific situations, just having that ability is super nice. Granted, like this is a linebacker, he hasn't played a lot, and you're gonna question his development as a coverage player and linebacker, but you could at the very least play him early down. So a very interesting prospect in Mullins, and one I'm glad is popping off. But we're gonna be talking about running backs today, as I got Caleb Johnson out of Iowa coming in at 6'2". Is it 6'2" or is it 6 foot? It's actually 6 foot, so that's a typo on the screen there. So haha, Broshmo and his typos. It is what it is. When you do as much Photoshop as I do, it'll happen. But he's 6 foot, 225 pounds, had a big day against Minnesota, going for 21 carries, 206 yards, 3 touchdowns, had 10 forced missed tackles. Utterly insane. He's someone I think Mel Kiper highlighted recently. So I knew he was someone that I was going to have to go in and watch. And I mean, he's been getting significant carries since his freshman year. He was a 4-star prospect out of the 2022 draft class and ended up getting 6 starts his freshman season. He had 5 starts his last season, so his sophomore season. He did miss a couple of games with an ankle injury. He was suspended for the first half of the season opener this year for violating team rules. Doesn't sound like it was that crazy, that nutty. So I'm not going to get out of hand with like, oh no, red flag. No, it's not that. It's not that. But when you go and watch him, you're like, golly, he is so much quicker than you'd expect. Like, he's got a big frame. He's got a strong frame. He's able to eat contact. But he's got some good burst. Like, he gets to top speed pretty quickly. He's able to beat defenders to the corner. And he's got some home run ability. Like, he can pull away from defenders. So, at that size, with that type of speed, probably talking of a potential top 100 player, right? Like, honestly, like going back, the only things that might keep him out of the top 100 and maybe more of a top 150 guy is, like, I think his vision can be inconsistent. Like, he gets a little impatient behind the line of scrimmage, so he'll either try to bounce the play outside prematurely or he'll just run into the backs of his blockers. So that area does need to get better in his game. On top of that, he being a taller back at 6 foot, not 6'2", but 6 foot, he does run with high pads, gets a little too upright, which kind of opens himself just for defenders to be able to get under his pads, get clean wrap-ups, and really just minimize his ability to create after contact. Also another guy with a minimal use in the passing game. Just really runs the basic running back route tree. Just hasn't been used as much as a pass blocker. He isn't the most shifty guy. He's very much someone that's probably better north-south than he is east-west, which is A-okay. It's fine. But not shifty enough to really create out in space so far as a pass catcher on those like swing plays and screens and whatnot. But still, in terms of size, speed, he looks very dangerous. And he's only a junior, so he could end up coming back. Who knows? Who knows? But I mean, I feel like at this juncture, just go ahead, kick off your NFL career, dude. We already know you're a weapon. I really do wonder how the NFL is going to project him. But let's stick with the running back position. I'm going to talk about Micah Bernard out of Utah. He's someone that I've talked about in the past. Like, I've probably talked about this guy on the channel maybe for the last 2 to 3 years. So you might be like, oh, he must be freaking old. He must be ancient. And I mean, he was formerly a 3-star recruit from the 2019 class. So he's going to be a bit older. But he put on a show this weekend. Yeah, he had the 2 fumbles. But the the dude, he had 100 and what? 186? Is that the number I have there? But yeah, he had a huge game. He was a big reason that the Utah offense was actually able to move. He hasn't really been used a ton as a he hasn't seen a lot of success as a pass catcher as he has in years past. But you know that he's got that feather in his cap to be able to do that. He is someone who's really good in the open field. He can legit make guys miss. He is just a very dangerous pass catcher. He's dangerous on the toss. He literally has make you miss type of quicks. Really good hands as a pass catcher. Good vision. Good burst. It's just doesn't have maybe ideal play strength to continue to churn through tackles. His pass pro is still a work in progress. He's kind of just like a speed bump at this point, but he was coming off the injury last year. Probably would have been in last year's draft if not for fracturing. What was it? He suffered a fracture to his face from a scooter accident of all things, and he would not play until the bowl game. So freaking A, that sucks. It kind of is what it is. He actually played corner back in 2021 because of injuries in the Rose Bowl against Ohio State and was kind of all right. But yeah, dude, I'm just glad he's back on the draft radar. I'm going to be honest, probably no more than a late day 3 pick at best. But it's just good to see someone do well. He's been on my radar since probably 2021. And here we are 3 years later. I'm happy to see him doing well. We had a couple of other running backs that actually had big weeks that I just haven't mentioned, but I want to talk about the guys that I haven't really talked about on the channel. So, again, hey, Quinshon Judkins, you had a good game. Cool. You beat up on Marshall. You're supposed to. Amarian Hampton has been having a big year too. Those are 2 guys that are top 50 prospects. Again, I kind of want to highlight players I haven't talked about yet. Especially, again, here at Broshmo, when we talk about the draft, we talk deep into the draft. I want to give you as many names as I can. I do. I truly, truly do. But I think I'm going to jump to the defensive side of the football here with Trey Rucker. So we're going to stick with that Utah-Oklahoma State game. But Trey Rucker had himself a day. I remember we were doing the watch-along for that game before we turned on Michigan-USC. But I was like, dude, is this guy a linebacker? Man, the way he's running around the field, but no, ends up being a safety. Granted, he's a box safety. He's a guy that he flourishes in the box. He's 6 foot 210. Ended up having 16 tackles. Legitimately, guys, he was everywhere on the field. 6 defensive stops, 2 interceptions. So he kind of just feels like an undersized linebacker. But though you can't really he feels like he plays with that girth. It might just be the physicality that he plays with. But yeah, he plays a physical brand of football. Legitimately, he comes downhill with a head full of steam. He really trusts his eyes underneath, and he is quick to trigger downfield and trigger on ball carriers, and he actually lays some jarring hits too. He's a mean hitter, and if you look at it, I was looking at some of his stuff last year, and he's an aggressive style of hitter that typically lends itself to a higher missed tackle rate, which it did last year. He had a 14.9% missed tackle rate, a little higher than you would want, but for his style of play, it's not surprising. And it actually it feels a lot better than that just because of the sheer volume. He had 103 tackles last year. And hey, straight up, the missed tackles aren't as abundant as they were last season. So yeah, I think he's currently under 10%, might be under 8% in terms of his missed tackle rate. So that's great. But he is a limited athlete in coverage. He does a good job of covering tight ends. We saw that with Brant Kuthi. He ended up getting the pick, to be fair. Isaac Wilson kind of threw the ball behind him. I don't know if he was expecting something different from Kuthi, but I guess they weren't on the same page, or it was just a poorly thrown ball. Rucker, he's able to stick downfield with tight ends. He's able to stick downfield with bigger, more physical options as pass catchers. But when it comes to the athleticism, I'm not going to trust him one-on-one with faster, shiftier wide receivers. I'm not going to trust him one-on-one, even with some running backs out of the backfield. Kind of depends on the running back, but he just doesn't have that speed moving back like he does coming downhill. So he's very much kind of a box safety / dime linebacker. And I would probably say this guy's like a late day 3 type of prospect just because of that role he's going to play. Maybe that could sneak him into the 5th round. But I do think he's undraftable simply because, again, I do the backgrounds for these guys as well. And I mean, I get it. He's a team captain, but he does have a DUI type of background. So let's just kind of run through it real quick with him. In 2019, he was a 3-star recruit, went to Wake Forest, transferred after 2 years, went to Oklahoma State in 2021. Prior to the season, he was arrested for assaulting an officer, being in control of a vehicle while under the influence. Basically, he was either driving or he went to his car while drunk and fell asleep in it. Don't know if he drove anywhere prior to that. Again, it's not what I didn't find any of that. But he had other offenses because he plays for Mike Gundy. Didn't get him suspended. He ended up playing in all 14 games, primarily as a special teamer though. In 2022, he did redshirt because he was ineligible for unknown reasons. Ended up being eligible to play in the Guaranteed Rate Bowl against Wisconsin. And then in 2023, he started all 14 games, but he was arrested after the team's 4th game for operating a motor vehicle while under the influence. Again, found asleep in the vehicle. Guys, DUI, alcohol, the NFL, and the cars, it just doesn't mix. To me, that makes you undraftable. We could bring you into camp. Maybe we could sign you as a priority UDFA, but I feel like I'm not going to burn a draft pick on that. Especially given this, like, you have to be something freaking special. Something special to kind of overlook that, especially considering all this happened between 2021 to 2023. So we're talking fairly recently, over the course of 3 years. So that's why I was a little bummed when I got done watching him. I was like, okay, he's fun, man. He's a fun player. I like him maybe mid to late day 3. And then background, I was like, oh yeah, probably won't touch this guy. So unfortunate. Not saying he's not a changed man. Mike Gundy has come out and said, hey, he's a boneheaded kid, but he's a good kid. So at least he's got praise for that. Low key, are we Mike Gundy and handling of DUIs? Because Ollie Gordon had one prior to the year. Now Ollie Gordon getting astray here because I'm talking about Mike Gundy. But like, can we take these things seriously? Can we suspend guys? Like, come on. It's been a problem at Georgia. Well, that and speeding, but like in Oklahoma State now, like, come on, man. What are we doing here? What the hell are we doing here? Next, I got Ashton Gilote. I'll get his name down eventually. Out of Louisville, coming in at 6'3", 275 pounds. And he had a big game against Georgia Tech. You might be like, oh, no sack. But Georgia Tech's got a really good offensive line. They really do. And Louisville totally destroyed it. Louisville did a great job of manhandling a very good offensive line. And you got to give Ashton a lot of the credit there. He had 5 pressures, 2 sacks, had a win rate of 17.4%. Just very solid. Went out there, did his thing. He was a very good run defender. That's honestly probably the biggest thing in his game. It's like, yeah, you feel good about what he does as a run defender. He should be in this top 50 conversation, if we're being honest. If you don't have him there, I don't know what we're doing. In an edge class that's like kind of desperate, I think, to find like who is the guy in this edge class. Like, there's a bunch of names that can emerge. Ashton's already a guy that was on many people's preseason rankings going into the year. He's been playing really well thus far this season. He kind of played in a smaller sample size the first couple of games because Louisville was just blowing out people. Now he actually played the full game here and was just freaking spectacular. He's just got a really good first step at 275, a good motor, does a good job of turning speed to power. I feel like the gap integrity with him has gotten better in the run game. As to be fair, like Louisville, like they'll be kind of wonky with him, where it's like, hey, you're playing outside of the tackle, you're playing wide. Hey, you're playing 4 inside tech. Oh, now you're real close to the 3 tech. So it's like, okay, he's playing a variety of different spots, and how to play the run's going to be different at all of those spots. So I could get it last year why maybe it didn't look clean. Looked really clean this game. But definitely someone that should be on your radar if he hasn't already. I'd be shocked. But had a very solid week. We're going to stick with edge rushers. And I'm going to talk about Josiah freaking Stewart. Again, I wish I got to give a shout out to Derek Moore, excuse me, his teammate. I wanted to talk about him. I wasn't able to kind of get an eval done. Didn't have time to go back and go through some of his other games this year. But him and Josiah Stewart have been tearing up. But let's talk about Josiah Stewart, because 6'1", 245, I get scared maybe he gets looked or viewed as maybe like Muhammad Kamara last year, caused him to fall to like the 5th round, even though he was uber productive. Like, Stewart's built different. He's doing this at the power 4 level. Can we maybe talk about him in the first round? I don't think that's out of the question. Ends up having 8 pressures, 5 defensive stops, 2 sacks, a forced fumble, and a win rate of 31.4% against USC. An utterly ridiculous game. This was someone who I can't remember what mock draft I did. This because it was while he was still, I think, at Coastal Carolina tearing it up. But I was like, hey, I want to give a shout out to this guy. And it may have been my too early 2022 or 2023 mock draft. I was like, I want to give a shout out to this guy. I think he's transferring to Michigan. Has been uber productive for Coastal Carolina. Little not ideal size, but holy moly, man, the dude gets after it. The dude's hella good. And I mean, dude, he just plays with that dog in him, man. Now, I am going to be a little concerned with like the play strength, but it really hasn't been a problem thus far this season. It really, really hasn't. He's been really, really solid in that regard. Again, just has that dog in him, plays physical, plays with the big motor. He's got really good burst and flexibility, and it's showing up in the analytics. It's showing up. So watch out. Joshua Stewart might be a man in this class. Again, I do want to give a shout out to Miller Moss. Like, dude, honestly, I think did a solid job despite the ineffectiveness of the offensive line. So I do want to give a shout out to poor Miller Moss, who's in that picture taking that sack right now. But let's keep rolling, and I'm going to talk about Steve Linton, edge out of Baylor. I couldn't find a good picture of him in a Baylor uni. I couldn't find a picture of him in the game that was really solid. So here he is playing for his first team, Syracuse. Did transfer to Texas Tech after that. And then now here at Baylor. Like, if you're unfamiliar with Steve Linton, he was someone a lot of people thought was going to have a breakout year for Texas Tech last season, and didn't really come to fruition. He's initially was a 3-star recruit from the 2019 recruiting class. Went to Syracuse, and it was someone that was used kind of in the rotation, but he was used like all over the defensive line. He ends up transferring last year to Texas Tech. where a lot of people was like, oh man, they're just going to let him go off the edge. But unfortunately, injury kind of screwed him as he was limited by an ankle sprain, then a back injury, ended up just playing in 8 games with 4 starts. So he transfers. Now he's at Baylor and wreaked utter havoc. So Baylor's got him listed as 6'5", 239. I mean, he's got a long frame, so that could be true, but I think he's got a little bit more weight than that on him. But he had a great game against, I get it, Colorado, not the best offensive line, but the dude went off. I'm just happy to see him doing well after having to come back from the injuries last year. Had 9 pressures, 4 defensive stops, 2 sacks, a forced fumble. The win rate, it was only 13%. But still, I mean, I'll take it. To be fair, freaking Shedeur was getting the ball out incredibly quickly. He's really acclimated himself to not having the best offensive line. Good on you, Shedeur. But Lennon is a very twitched up athlete. Plays with really good burst. On top of that, just again has that dog in him, as he was someone that was actually used along the interior at Syracuse. But you are going to wonder about the down-to-down play strength, the functional play strength. Isn't, like, despite the length, isn't the most solid tackler. Has a career missed tackle rate of 23%. Just kind of, and this is kind of the biggest kicker with him. He's just got an incredibly small sample size for a guy his age. He will be 25 going into his rookie season. So he's got some things working against him, but I think there's a more than enough there in terms of athletic and physical tools to take a flyer on him late day 3. So I wanted to give him his love. Now let's stick with this game and talk about Shedeur Sanders, who played phenomenal. 6'2", 215, went 25 of 41 for 341 yards, 2 tutties. Through the air, also had a touchdown on the ground, had 77 rushing yards, actually picked up yards with his feet, because like we know he's got good mobility, but he's someone who's more so, if he's going to extend the play with his feet, it's to do so for the passing game and not to be a runner. So yeah, I like that. I actually really like that about him, but he played a really good game against Baylor. Really did. He was able to process, like, listen, when it comes to Shedeur, there's no doubts about his processor. There's no doubts about his anticipation, ability, his ball placement, his touch passes. He does throw with some zip on the short to intermediate. I just don't think that arm strength is that good downfield, but that's fine. Like, and I say not that good. I still think it's a quality arm. I think his arm is probably on par, or if not, maybe a little bit better in terms of the strength than maybe like a Joe Burrow. And Joe Burrow, what is he like? What's his game? Oh, it's precision passing. It's getting the ball out quickly and efficiently, and it's I can throw with hella good touch. That's kind of Shedeur's game. That's kind of his game. Listen, I get it. You may not like the personality, and a lot of that has to do with the atmosphere there at Colorado. But to be fair, at least it's better. At least his personality is better than Shiloh's. Shiloh catching strays out here. And Shedeur has I think the immense talent to back that up. If we're talking about quarterback 1 and you're like, oh, I have Shedeur, I'm okay with that. Like, you could look at like Cam Ward, who I think has better physical tools, just a bigger arm, but isn't as put together as a passer as Shedeur is. And you could be like, oh, Ward's 1, quarterback 1. I think that's fine. But I think we should all agree that there's not a top 10 quarterback right now. I don't think anyone's really stood out like that. Like, Shedeur's play, if it keeps up like this, you can make a case. I still don't think I'm taking quarterback first overall. It's just, it doesn't feel like this is the class for that. But this was a good game for Shedeur. The Hail Mary was freaking nuts. But a man that's constantly composed while on the field, even when things aren't going ideal, aren't going well. I think he's been a little bit better about vacating clean pockets. To be fair, doesn't always have, majority of the time the pockets aren't always clean, but that was something last year you kind of saw with him, was he would vacate sometimes clean pockets and kind of create pressure on himself by himself. And a lot of that has probably had to do with just his trust and faith in the offensive line. But I think he's done a really good job of that this year. But yeah, Shedeur, he should be in the quarterback one conversation. I'm going to go back and I'm going to shuffle up my rankings in the next couple of weeks. And it's literally anyone's game for quarterback one, man. It's kind of nuts. All right. I got Trey Harris, wide receiver out of Ole Miss. Going to talk about him there. Also want to give a little love to Juice Wells in this game, as he has popped off after coming off of the injury last year. It's so nice to see him doing extremely well as someone that I was high on, not just last year, but the year prior. And it's just good to see him be healthy and just blow up. But Trey Harris, he is looking really good. I know it's been cupcake schedule city. He ends up going for 11 receptions, 225 yards, 2 tutties against Georgia Southern. But I bet you he's going to play really well against Kentucky. Like I get it. Like his separation, he doesn't always get ideal separation, but I think it's been a lot better this year. And he's able to at least get a step or two. A step. Let's reel back on that too. But a step on defenders in coverage, which gives, honestly, Jackson Darnold more than enough room to be able to just drop the ball in there. But also, he's been a lot more consistent at the catch point than he was last year. And to be fair, last year, a lot of his inconsistencies at the catch point, which the dude was a baller over at what was it? Was it Louisiana prior to here? But he was an absolute baller at Louisiana Tech, excuse me. When it came to the contested catch, but then after facing SEC play consistently, you saw that number go down. I'm curious, will that number, now that he started off the year hot, the contested catches are really, really good for him, will that rate continue to stay high now in his second year in the SEC? I think that's a fair question. We'll get that. We'll at least get a little bit of that answer this week against Kentucky. But not necessarily the fastest guy, but someone who's just got great hands, plays with really good strength, has shown alignment versatility, whether that's on the outside, in the slot, and just a very powerful ball carrier, able to just force missed tackles, force yards after contact. He already has 10 forced missed tackles this season through 4 games. Ludicrous number. So I wanted to give him a shout out. Also want to give a shout out to Illinois' Pat Bryant, who popped off against Nebraska. I think he had like 2 tutties. Didn't get to his film, though, from this year yet. So, again, I like to put guys on this list that I've at least watched like 3 or 4 games from. And I just couldn't get to Pat Bryant. I'm looking forward to get into him later this week, though. But the wide receiver class is looking fun as hell. And that's probably just going to be what it is every year now with the wide receiver class. But hey, let's talk about Harold Fanning Jr., tight end out of Bowling Green, coming in at 6'4", 230 pounds. And you might be like, tight end? That boy's a little light to be a tight end, ain't he? And it's like, yeah, he's a little light to be a tight end. He's a little light to be a tight end. But fun fact, he plays with that dog in him. And I love it. I love it. I was able to finally get around to his tape this week, and It was funny because I got to his tape prior to the weekend because I really wanted to see that Penn State tape. He was someone that was on my summer watch list that I just didn't get to. He was very impressive in the Penn State game. And then he comes out and has a really good game against Texas A&M where he has 8 receptions for 145 yards and a touchdown. And he kind of gives me, granted, James Mitchell had much better size, but he's got that James Mitchell dog in him. If you're not familiar with James Mitchell, he's now like tight end 3 for the Lions, or maybe even tight end 4. I don't know. He's on the Lions, but at Virginia Tech, dude was an absolute animal. But that's Fannin, man. He plays with that dog in him, man. Like, he might not check your boxes when it comes to weight, length, even play speed, because like he's not like the most shiftiest guy. He's just not. But the dude plays with the tremendous motor, whether it's at the catch point, after the catch, or even as a blocker. Now, granted, dude's not going to survive in the NFL as an inline blocker primarily. He's gonna be more of a move blocker type, whether that is in motion, whether that's as a tight end 2 in the slot, out wide. But he gives you that alignment versatility, even if you might just view him as like a jumbo receiver. But the dude's got good burst. He's able to create initial separation out of breaks, with just a really good bit of explosiveness out of that step. Quick feet. He's able to change direction really well. He's able to plant that foot and go. Very sharp on those cuts during his routes. It's not like he's ran the biggest route tree in the world, but for what they're asking him to run there, I think he's done a stellar job. And he has been a yak monster. Like, you go back to last year, he had 13 forced missed tackles. And I think this year he's already up to like close to, I want to say he's like close to like 7 or 10. Let's take a quick gander at that. Let me just go fact check myself right here on the spot. All right, so Fannin he has 10 forced missed tackles already this season, and that's on 25 receptions. So he's able to create after the catch. And it's like super insane. Like, I like it, man. I love it. However, when it comes to the critiques, it is going to be, oh, man, his blocking ability. You can't trust him in line, so you're going to have to kind of scheme up stuff for him. And I think that's fine. I think that's okay. He can also be a bit like high-hipped as a runner. Like, he plays a bit, or at least he runs a bit online, whether that's or upright, whether that's inline or out wide. And for one, that causes him as a route runner not to necessarily be able to gear down. I think that's the most apparent on like comeback routes, as he's not able to create a good bit of separation when trying to come back to the football, just because he's a little bit too high-hipped, and you want to see him just be able to get those hips down a little bit better. Also, it shows up as a blocker, as you kind of want to dig down and get under the defender's pads. I mean, you never want the defender to get lower than you, because then you're just going to get blown up. So that's something he needs to work on. But right now, again, giving me that James Mitchell vibe, which probably puts him in like the 5th round area. But I'm so happy I was able to get to him. And I was even more happy when I feasted my eyes on his tape. But let me know, who are some of your favorite prospects this past weekend? Maybe some guys who helped their stock. Who are some guys that you were like, didn't look all that great? Who are some of the guys that broke your heart this weekend? Let me know in the comment section below. And of course, I always got draft content on the channel. I'm going to be having a mock draft come out a little bit later, so be on the look for that sucker. But thank you for hanging out with me. And as always, till next time, you be easy, my friends. Later. All right, that's going to kick off the stream as well for you guys. I don't see any questions in the comments or in the chat. So, yeah, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to get a top 25 video out for y'all right after this. But if you're already viewing this, then you've already seen it. But I am going to try to get a mock draft out for you a little bit later today. So be on the look for that. But Thank you for hanging out with me. Thank you for your support. If you haven't already, hit that thumbs up on the way out. And as always, until next time, you be easy, my friends. Later.